The drought had teeth. It came slow at first, the way most disasters do. A few missed rains, some yellowing grass, the creek running lower than usual. Then it dug in and held. The land around Iron Ridge turned brittle, crops withered in fields that used to run green all the way to the foothills, and dust became the only thing that moved freely through town. People stopped talking about when the rains would come. They talked instead about who would leave next, which homestead would go abandoned, which family couldn't make it through another season of this slow strangulation. Eliza Thorn didn't plan on leaving. She'd already lost the only thing that could have made her run. The clinic sat at the far end of Main Street, a narrow building with whitewashed walls that had gone gray from neglect and a door that never fully closed. Inside, the air smelled like carbolic soap and exhaustion. Eliza moved through it the way she moved through everything now, efficiently, quietly, without attachment. She cleaned wounds, set bones, delivered babies, and charged what people could pay, which was often nothing. She didn't mind. Money wasn't why she did this. She wasn't entirely sure why she did it anymore, except that stopping would mean facing the silence waiting in her empty house, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It was late afternoon when Mary Pruitt stumbled through the clinic door with her youngest boy cradled against her chest. The child was burning up, his breath coming in shallow gasps, and Mary's eyes had that wild look Eliza had seen too many times, the look of a mother watching death creep close. "Please," Mary whispered, "please, he won't wake up." Eliza didn't waste time on reassurances. She took the boy, laid him on the examination table, and got to work. Fever. Dehydration. The same sickness that had been crawling through town for weeks now, picking off the weakest first. Children, the elderly. Anyone whose body didn't have enough fight left. She'd lost 3 patients to it already. She didn't intend to lose a 4th. "Boil water," she said, not looking up. "Clean rags. Move." Mary obeyed. Eliza worked through the night, sponging the boy down, forcing water between his cracked lips, monitoring his breathing. Somewhere around midnight, the fever broke. By dawn, his eyes fluttered open, confused but alive. Mary wept. Eliza just nodded, wiped her hands, and told the woman to keep him hydrated. "How much do I owe you?" Mary asked. "Nothing. I can't just—" "You don't owe me anything." Mary left with her son wrapped in a blanket, and Eliza stood alone in the clinic, staring at the table where the boy had been. She felt nothing, not relief, not satisfaction, just the dull ache that lived behind her ribs now, the one that never quite went away. She thought about Thomas. Her husband had been a good man, steady, kind, the sort who fixed things without being asked and never raised his voice, even when he should have. The fever took him in less than a week. She'd done everything she could, used every trick she knew, and it hadn't mattered. He died anyway, gasping for air in their bed while she held his hand and lied about how he was getting better. That was 2 years ago. She still couldn't sleep in that bed. The door opened again, and Eliza turned, expecting another patient. Instead, she found Sheriff Dalton leaning against the frame, his hat in his hands. "You look like hell," he said. "Appreciate the observation. Mary says you saved her boy." "I did my job." Dalton stepped inside, glancing around the clinic like he was searching for something to say. He was a decent man, competent enough at keeping the peace, though peace in Iron Ridge didn't require much effort these days. Most people were too tired to cause trouble. "There's talk," he said finally. "There's always talk." "About you?" Eliza crossed her arms. "What kind of talk?" "The kind that says you're working yourself into an early grave. The kind that says you haven't smiled in 2 years. The kind that says maybe it's time you let someone help you carry the weight." "I'm fine." "You're not." She met his eyes, and for a moment something passed between them. Not anger exactly, but a mutual recognition of boundaries neither wanted to cross. "I'm managing," she said. Dalton sighed, put his hat back on. "All right, just thought I'd check." He left, and Eliza returned to cleaning instruments that were already clean. The sun was setting when she finally locked up the clinic and started the walk home. The streets were mostly empty, just a few stragglers heading back from the general store or the saloon. She passed the church, its windows dark, the Reverend having left town 3 months ago when the collection plates stopped filling, and turned down the dusty road that led to her house. It wasn't much. A small cabin on the edge of town, one room with a stove, a table, a chair, and the bed she refused to use. She slept in the chair most nights, waking with a stiff neck and the kind of fatigue that went deeper than muscle. She was halfway to the door when she noticed the figure standing in her yard. Tall, broad-shouldered, backlit by the dying sun so she couldn't make out his face. Eliza's hand went to the knife she kept in her coat pocket. "Can I help you?" she called. The man didn't move. "Eliza Thorn?" His voice was low, rough-edged, like he didn't use it much. "Who's asking?" He stepped forward, and the light hit him properly. He was older than her, maybe 40, maybe more, with dark hair going gray at the temples and a face that looked like it had been carved out of the same stone as the mountains. His clothes were worn but clean, his boots scuffed from hard use, and he carried himself with the kind of stillness that made her think of predators waiting in tall grass. "Name's Rourke Hale," he said. She'd heard the name before. Everyone had. Rourke Hale was the man who lived alone up in the high country, breaking horses for a living and keeping to himself so completely that most people forgot he existed until someone needed a wild stallion turned into something rideable. "What do you want?" she asked. "To talk." "About what?" "A proposition." Eliza's grip tightened on the knife. "I'm not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to. I'm not looking for company, Mr. Hale, and I'm too tired for games. So unless you're bleeding or dying, I suggest you move along." He didn't move. "I'm building a house," he said. She blinked. "Good for you." "On Iron Ridge Peak." "Still don't see what that has to do with me." "I need someone to share it with." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eliza stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the smirk, the moment this stopped being real. It didn't come. "You're joking," she said. "I'm not. You don't even know me." "I know enough." "What's that supposed to mean?" Rourke shifted his weight, and for the first time she saw something crack in that stony exterior. Not weakness, exactly, but something human. "I know you're a widow," he said. "I know you work yourself half to death healing people who can't pay you. I know you don't sleep right, don't eat right, and spend every waking hour trying to outrun grief that's faster than you are." Her breath caught. "I also know," he continued, "that you're strong. Stronger than most men I've met. And I know that if you keep going the way you're going, you'll be dead inside 5 years, if not sooner. You don't know a damn thing about me. Maybe not, but I know what I'm offering." "Which is what, exactly? Some lunatic proposal from a stranger who builds houses in the mountains?" "A partnership." "I don't need a partner." "Everyone needs a partner." "Not me." "Then you're lying to yourself." The anger came fast and hot, rising up from the place she kept it buried. "You have no right." "I'll build the home," Rourke said, cutting her off. His voice was calm, steady, maddeningly certain. "You help me build the family." Eliza opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. "Think about it," he said. "That's all I'm asking." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the dusk like he'd never been there at all. She stood in her yard for a long time, staring at the spot where he'd stood, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She couldn't. Busan. Sleep didn't come easy that night. She sat in her chair, wrapped in a blanket, watching shadows move across the walls. Her mind kept circling back to Rourke Hale's words, dissecting them, searching for the trick, the angle, the thing that made sense of a proposal that made no sense at all. A partnership. A family. She hadn't thought about either in years. After Thomas died, she'd locked that part of herself away, buried it so deep she'd almost convinced herself it didn't exist anymore. The idea of opening it up again, of letting someone in, of risking that kind of pain. No, it was insane. He was insane. And yet, there was something in the way he'd looked at her. Not pity, not desire. Just recognition. Like he saw the thing she worked so hard to hide and wasn't afraid of it. She hated that. She hated that it mattered. 3 days passed before she saw him again. She'd just finished stitching up a ranch hand who'd gotten kicked by a horse when Rourke walked into the clinic, holding his right hand wrapped in a bloody rag. "Need that looked at," he said. Eliza gestured to the chair. "Sit." He sat. She unwrapped the rag carefully, revealing a deep gash across his palm, Clean, recent, probably from a blade or sharp edge. "What happened?" she asked. "Cutting timber. Slipped. You should be more careful." "Probably." She cleaned the wound, threaded her needle, and started stitching. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, just sat there, watching her work with those steady, unreadable eyes. "You thought about my offer?" he asked. "No." "You're lying." She pulled the thread tight, maybe a little harder than necessary. "You don't know me well enough to call me a liar. I know you well enough to know you're scared." Her hands stilled. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. I'm not scared of you." "Didn't say you were. You're scared of what I'm offering." "Which is what? Some fantasy about playing house on a mountain? A chance to stop running?" She tied off the stitch, cut the thread. "I'm not running?" "You've been running since your husband died. You just do it standing still." The words hit like a slap. She stepped back, putting distance between them, her chest tight. "You don't get to do that," she said quietly. "You don't get to walk into my life and tell you the truth. Judge me. I'm not judging you. I'm asking you to stop judging yourself." She looked away, hating the way his words burrowed under her skin, hating that he could see things she'd spent 2 years trying to hide. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Why not you?" "That's not an answer." Rourke stood, flexing his newly stitched hand. "I'm not good with words. Never have been. But I know what I want. I want a home that's more than 4 walls. I want someone strong enough to build it with me. And I think—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I think you want the same thing. You're just too afraid to admit it." He left before she could respond. Nick. A week later, she found herself riding toward Iron Ridge Peak. She told herself it was curiosity, that she just wanted to see this house he claimed to be building, to prove to herself it was all talk, that Rourke Hale was just another broken man chasing a dream that didn't exist. The trail climbed steep through pine forests and granite outcroppings, the air growing thinner and colder as she ascended. Her horse, a sturdy mare she'd borrowed from the livery, picked its way carefully over loose rocks and exposed roots. And then she saw it. The house sat on a wide plateau overlooking the valley, half-finished but already substantial. Stone walls rising from a foundation of fitted granite, timber framing for the roof, windows cut to face the sunrise. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't fancy, but it was solid, real, built by someone who knew what they were doing and wasn't planning on leaving. Rourke was working on the roof, shirtless despite the cold, sweat gleaming on his back. He looked up as she approached, didn't seem surprised. "Thought you might come," he said. Eliza dismounted, tied her horse, and walked closer. Up close, the craftsmanship was even more impressive. Every stone fit perfectly, every beam aligned. This wasn't the work of a dreamer. This was the work of someone who understood that promises were built with hands, not words. "How long have you been working on this?" she asked. 6 months. "Alone?" "Mostly." She turned in a slow circle, taking it in. "Why here?" "It's high enough the drought won't matter. There's a spring 100 yards east. Never runs dry. Good soil for a garden. Trees for timber. Close enough to town for trade, far enough for privacy. You've thought this through." "I don't do anything I haven't thought through." She looked at him then, really looked at him. Saw the scars on his hands, the lines around his eyes, the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders. This was a man who'd known pain, who'd survived it, who'd decided to build something anyway. "I still don't understand why you need me," she said. "Because a house isn't a home without someone to share it with. Because I'm tired of being alone. And because—" He climbed down from the roof, stood facing her. "Because I think you're tired of it too." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. "Neither do I. I'm not easy to live with. I don't expect easy. I might not be able to give you what you want. I'm not asking for guarantees, just a chance." She closed her eyes, feeling the sun on her face, the wind in her hair, the weight of 2 years' grief sitting heavy on her chest. "I need time," she said. "Take all you need. I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking you to." She opened her eyes, met his gaze. "If I do this, if I even consider this, it's on my terms. I'm not some woman you rescue or fix or save. I'm a partner or I'm nothing. Understood? For the first time since she'd met him, Rourke smiled. It was small, barely there, but real. Understood. She started visiting the peak regularly after that. At first, it was just to watch him work, partly to convince herself this was real, partly because something about the rhythm of it soothed her. Rourke didn't talk much, didn't push, just kept building while she sat on a rock and tried to imagine what it would feel like to live here. Then she started helping. Small things at first. Holding boards while he hammered, mixing mortar, handing him tools. But gradually, she found herself doing more, cutting timber, hauling stone, learning the way each piece fit into the larger whole. It felt good. Better than good. It felt like purpose. They worked mostly in silence, but the silence wasn't empty. It was the kind that existed between people who didn't need words to communicate, who understood each other through the simple act of building something together. One afternoon, while they were taking a break, Eliza asked the question that had been gnawing at her. Why now? Why build this now? Rourke took a long drink from his canteen, wiped his mouth. Because I'm done waiting. For what? For life to give me permission to start over. She understood that, maybe more than he knew. What happened to you? She asked. Before this? His jaw tightened. That's a long story. We've got time. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I was married once, long time ago. We were young, stupid, thought we could build something out in the territories. But the land was hard, the winters were harder, and he paused. I was careless, made mistakes, got involved with the wrong people, and she paid the price for it. She died? Not just her. His voice went flat. She was carrying our child. Eliza's breath caught. Rourke, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you know who you're dealing with. I'm not some noble man with a pure heart. I'm someone who lost everything because I was too proud to see the danger until it was too late. And I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to live with that. Is that why you're building this? To make up for it? Maybe. Or maybe I just finally figured out that the only way forward is to build something worth protecting this time. She reached out, placed her hand over his. You're not the only one carrying ghosts. I know. They sat like that for a while, two broken people on a mountain, surrounded by the skeleton of a house that might become a home. Vatis. Things changed after that conversation. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small, quiet ways that mattered. She started staying later at the peak, sometimes until sunset. Started bringing supplies from town, nails, hinges, things Rourke needed but couldn't easily get himself. Started thinking of the house as theirs instead of his. And slowly, carefully, she started letting herself imagine a future that didn't revolve around grief. It terrified her, but it also gave her something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. That's when Victor Kaine arrived in Iron Ridge. He came in a fancy carriage pulled by matching black horses, dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than most people in town made in a year. Word spread fast. A businessman from back east looking to invest in land. He set up in the hotel, bought drinks for everyone in the saloon, and talked about opportunity, progress, the future. People wanted to believe him. The drought had made them desperate, and desperation made them gullible. Eliza didn't trust him. She couldn't say why exactly. Maybe it was the way he smiled too much, or the way his eyes never quite matched his words. Maybe it was just instinct, but when she mentioned her concerns to Sheriff Dalton, he waved them off. Man's got money, and he's willing to spend it here. That's good for everyone. Or it's good for him and bad for everyone else. You're being paranoid. Maybe she was, but paranoia had kept her alive this long. Kaine's true purpose became clear 2 weeks later. He started buying land. Lots of it. He'd approached struggling homesteaders with cash offers, low, but better than nothing, and most took the deal. Those who refused found themselves facing legal challenges, disputed property lines, old debts suddenly called in, tax liens that appeared out of nowhere. It was systematic, efficient, ruthless, and it was working. Within a month, Kaine owned half the valley. Eliza was treating a patient when she heard the commotion outside. She stepped onto the clinic porch and saw Kaine's carriage parked in front of the sheriff's office, surrounded by a small crowd. Dalton stood on the steps, holding a rolled-up document. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kaine's voice rang out smooth and confident, "I come bearing good news. Thanks to some recently discovered historical records, I've been able to establish clear legal title to several disputed properties in this area. This will finally resolve the uncertainty that's been plaguing your community." Eliza's stomach dropped. She pushed through the crowd, grabbed Dalton's arm. "What properties?" The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Eliza, what properties, John?" Kaine answered instead, his smile sharp. "Various parcels in the hills, including, I'm pleased to say, Iron Ridge Peak." Everything stopped. "That's impossible," Eliza said. "Rourke Hale. Mr. Hale is, unfortunately, a squatter. The land belongs to my family's trust, has for 3 generations. I have the deed right here, properly recorded and notarized. He'll need to vacate immediately, of course, but I'm prepared to offer him reasonable compensation for any improvements he's made." "This is a lie. It's documented fact, Miss Thorn. I understand you've become friendly with Mr. Hale, but feelings don't change property law." The crowd murmured. Eliza's hands clenched into fists. "Show me the deed," she demanded. Kaine unrolled the document with a flourish. It looked official, signatures, seals, all the right language, but something about it felt wrong. "I'm sure Mr. Hale will see reason," Kaine continued. "No one wants this to become unpleasant." Eliza looked at Dalton. "You're allowing this?" The sheriff's face was resigned. "Papers look legitimate. My hands are tied." "Your hands are—" She bit off the words, spun on her heel, and started walking. "Miss Thorn," Kaine called after her, "please tell Mr. Hale I'll be happy to discuss terms. I'm a reasonable man." She didn't respond. She was already running. She rode to Iron Ridge Peak faster than was safe, her horse breathing hard by the time they crested the final ridge. Rourke was working on the porch, fitting boards, and he looked up as she dismounted. One look at her face, and he set down his tools. "What happened?" She told him. Everything. The deed, Kaine's claim, the sheriff's spinelessness. Rourke listened without interrupting, his expression growing harder with each word. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "He's lying. I know he's lying, but he's got papers that say otherwise." "Papers can be forged. Can you prove that?" "No, I never filed for this land proper. Just built on it, figured that was claim enough." "Damn it, Rourke. I know." He looked at the house, at the months of work, the stones he'd fitted with his own hands. "I know. What are we going to do?" He met her eyes, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Not fear, not defeat, something darker. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly. "This is mine. I built it, and no paper-pushing bastard from back east is taking it from me. He's got the law on his side. Then the law's wrong. Rourke, I mean it, Eliza. I've lost enough. I'm not losing this too." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it wasn't worth it, that they could build somewhere else, that a piece of land wasn't worth dying for. But looking at his face, at the house behind him, at the future they'd started building together, she couldn't, because he was right. Some things were worth fighting for, even if the fight was one they couldn't win. Victor Kaine didn't come to the mountain himself. He sent his men instead. They arrived 3 days after the confrontation in town, 4 of them on horseback, dressed like ranch hands but moving like something else entirely. Eliza saw them from the half-finished porch where she'd been helping Rourke install the last window frame. The riders stopped at the base of the trail, close enough to be seen but far enough to avoid immediate confrontation. "That's them," Rourke said, his voice flat. Eliza's hands tightened on the hammer she'd been holding. "What do they want?" "To see if I scare easy." One of the riders, a lean man with a scar running down his left cheek, cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted up the slope. "Mr. Hale, Mr. Kaine would like a word. Says he's willing to negotiate." Rourke didn't respond. He picked up another nail, positioned it carefully, and drove it home with 3 precise strikes. The scarred man tried again. "He's offering good money, more than the land's worth. All you got to do is pack up and move along." Still nothing. After a few more attempts, the riders gave up and turned back toward town, but Eliza noticed they didn't hurry. They rode slow, taking their time, like they wanted Rourke to know they could come back whenever they felt like it. "They'll be back," she said. I know. With more than words next time. Probably. She set down the hammer. Rourke, we need to talk about this. Nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. Kaine has money, hired guns, and the law on his side. What do you have? He looked at her then, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. I have this, he said, gesturing to the house. And I have you. That's enough. It's not. It's not nearly enough, and you know it. Then what do you want me to do? Walk away. Let him take it. I want you alive more than I want a house. The words came out sharper than she intended. Rourke's jaw worked, and for a moment she thought he might argue. Instead, he turned back to the window frame, his movements deliberate and controlled. I've walked away before, he said quietly. From fights, from trouble, from things I should have stood up to. And every time, people I cared about paid the price. I'm done walking. This isn't the same. It's exactly the same. You're being stubborn. I'm being honest. Eliza wanted to scream, wanted to shake him until he saw reason, but she also understood. She'd spent 2 years running from her own pain, and it had nearly destroyed her. Rourke had clearly spent longer running from his. Maybe this house, this stand, this refusal to back down. Maybe it was the only way he knew how to stop. That didn't make it smart, but it made it human. She picked up her coat. I need to get back to town. I have patience. Eliza, we're not done talking about this, but I need time to think. He nodded, and she saw something flicker across his face. Not quite fear, but close, like he was afraid she wouldn't come back. She almost told him she would, almost promised. But promises were dangerous things, and she'd learned not to make them lightly. Instead, she mounted her horse and rode down the mountain, leaving Rourke alone with his half-built dream and the storm that was coming for it. The town felt different when she got back. Smaller, more fragile. She'd never noticed how many buildings needed repair, how many faces looked worn down by years of just getting by. Iron Ridge had always been a hardscrabble place, but the drought had stripped away whatever resilience it once had. People were barely holding on, and Kaine knew it. That's what made him dangerous. He understood desperation, knew how to use it. She was walking past the saloon when she heard raised voices inside. Through the window, she could see a group of men clustered around one of the tables, farmers, mostly, along with a few of the merchants. And at the center of it all, holding court like some kind of frontier king, was Victor Kaine. Eliza pushed through the door. Significant return on investment, Kaine was saying, his voice smooth as oil. The railway is expanding westward. Within 2 years, this valley will be a major shipping hub. Those who position themselves correctly stand to make considerable profit. And those who don't? Asked Tom Brennan, who owned the feed store. Kaine smiled. Well, Mr. Brennan, opportunity doesn't wait for the hesitant, but I'm confident we can find arrangements that benefit everyone. Everyone except the people you're pushing off their land, Eliza said. The room went quiet. Kaine turned, his smile never wavering. Miss Thorn, how pleasant. Won't you join us? I'd rather not. Surely you understand the value of progress. A woman of your education, your skills, you could do so much better than this dying little town. This dying little town is my home. Sentiment is admirable, but it doesn't pay bills or put food on tables. He gestured to the gathered men. These gentlemen understand reality. They know that sometimes survival requires difficult choices. Survival shouldn't require surrendering to a man with forged documents and hired thugs. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kaine's smile finally slipped. That's a serious accusation, Miss Thorn. It's the truth. Truth requires proof. Do you have any? She didn't, and he knew it. I have eyes, she said, and a working brain, and both tell me you're not here to help anyone but yourself. Paranoia is unbecoming. So is theft. One of Kaine's men, a thick-necked brute who'd been standing near the bar, took a step forward. Kaine raised a hand, stopping him. Gentlemen, Kaine said, addressing the room, I apologize for this disruption. Miss Thorn is understandably emotional. She's formed an attachment to Mr. Hale, and that's clouding her judgment. But I assure you, everything I'm doing is legal, documented, and in the best interests of this community. Except for the part where you're stealing land. I'm reclaiming what legally belongs to my family's estate. There's a difference. Eliza looked around the room, searching for support. Most of the men avoided her eyes. Tom Brennan looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Sheriff Dalton, standing near the back, just shook his head slightly. She was alone. "This isn't over," she said. Kaine's smile returned. "On that, Miss Thorn, we agree." She left before she said something she'd regret, her hands shaking with anger and frustration. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the dusty street in shades of blood and gold. It would have been beautiful if she hadn't felt so sick. A hand touched her shoulder. She spun, ready to fight, and found herself facing Mary Pruitt, the woman whose son she'd saved weeks ago. "Don't listen to them," Mary said quietly. "They're scared. Scared makes people stupid. Scared or not, they're letting Kaine get away with it. What choice do they have? He's got money, lawyers, men with guns. What have they got? Dust and debt. They've got each other." Mary's smile was sad. "That used to be enough. I'm not sure it is anymore." Eliza wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. Because Mary was right. Whatever community Iron Ridge once had, the drought had eroded it down to nothing. People were too focused on their own survival to worry about their neighbors, and Kaine was counting on it. She walked back to her cabin as darkness fell, her mind churning. There had to be a way to fight this. Some legal angle, some proof that Kaine's documents were fake. But even if she found it, who would believe her? Who would stand with her against a man who held all the cards? Rourke would. The thought came unbidden, but once it arrived, it wouldn't leave. Rourke would stand. He'd proven that already. He'd fight even if it killed him, which was exactly what terrified her. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her cabin, thinking about promises and second chances and the kinds of choices that changed everything. By morning, she'd made her decision. She rode back to the peak at first light, pushing her horse hard. Rourke was already working, this time on the interior walls. He looked up as she approached, surprise and relief warring on his face. "Didn't think you'd come back so soon," he said. "I'm not letting you do this alone." Eliza says, "No, listen to me. You want to fight Kaine? Fine. We fight Kaine, but we do it smart. We find proof that his documents are forged. We get people on our side. We make him answer for what he's doing. And if we can't find proof, then we find another way. But we do it together. Understand?" Something shifted in Rourke's expression, surprise giving way to something deeper, more vulnerable. "You're sure?" he asked. No. I'm terrified, but I'm also tired of running. So if you're going to make a stand, I'm standing with you." He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into an embrace that felt like coming home. She let herself sink into it, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me yet. We might both end up dead." "Worth it." She pulled back enough to look at him. "You're crazy." "Probably. And stubborn. Definitely. And I think—" She hesitated, then pushed forward. "I think I might be falling for you." His breath caught. "Eliza, don't. Don't say anything. I'm not ready for declarations or promises. I just needed you to know. Because if we're doing this, if we're really fighting this fight, I want to be honest about what I'm fighting for." Rourke's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so rough-edged. "I'll build you a life worth living," he said. "I swear it. Just build me a life. I'll make it worth living myself." He smiled then, a real smile, the kind she'd only seen hints of before, and for just a moment, standing there in the skeletal frame of their unfinished house, with danger circling like wolves in the dark, she let herself believe it was possible. Then reality crashed back in. They spent the next week trying to find proof of Kaine's fraud. Eliza rode into town every day, talking to anyone who'd listen, searching for inconsistencies in his story. Rourke made the longer trip to the county seat, digging through property records and surveyor's reports. They found nothing. Kaine's forgery, if it was a forgery, was too good. Every signature looked legitimate. Every seal appeared authentic. Either he'd spent serious money getting it done right, or the documents were actually real, and Rourke really was squatting on land that didn't belong to him. Eliza refused to believe the latter. "There's got to be something," she said, pacing the floor of the unfinished house while Rourke sat at their makeshift table, papers spread out before him. "Some mistake. Some detail that doesn't add up. If there is, I can't find it. Then we're not looking hard enough. Eliza? No, I won't accept this. There has to be a way. Rourke stood, caught her mid-pace, and held her still. Maybe there isn't. Maybe Kaine's just better at this than we are. So what? We give up? We adapt. To what? Losing everything? To fighting different. He wants a legal battle? Fine, we can't win that. But there are other kinds of battles. She searched his face, trying to read what he wasn't saying. What are you planning? Nothing yet, but I'm thinking about it. That was what worried her. 3 days later, Kaine escalated. Eliza was in the clinic, treating a boy with a broken arm, when she heard the commotion outside. She finished splinting the injury, told the boy's mother to keep it elevated, and stepped onto the porch. A crowd had gathered near the sheriff's office. At its center stood Kaine, flanked by his men, and looking even more pleased with himself than usual. "What's going on?" Eliza asked Tom Brennan, who stood at the edge of the crowd. "Kaine's filing official eviction papers, giving Rourke 1 week to clear off the peak, or he's sending the sheriff up there to remove him by force." Her stomach dropped. "Dalton's going along with this?" "Got no choice. Kaine's got legal right on his side, at least according to the judge." "The Judge Kaine probably paid off." Tom shrugged helplessly. "Doesn't matter. Law's the law." Eliza pushed through the crowd until she stood face to face with Kaine. "You're making a mistake," she said. "I'm enforcing my legal rights. You're pushing a good man off land that's rightfully his. The courts disagree, as does the documentation I've provided. Mr. Hale has 1 week. After that, he becomes a criminal trespasser, and I'll have no choice but to pursue appropriate remedies." Appropriate remedies. That's what you're calling armed thugs now? Kaine's smile was all teeth. "I prefer to think of them as security personnel, but call them what you like. The result will be the same." Sheriff Dalton stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Eliza, this isn't helping. Neither is rolling over for a con man. He's got papers, forged papers. You got proof of that?" She didn't answer. Dalton sighed. "Then there's nothing I can do. I'm sorry." Kaine tipped his hat to her. "Miss Thorn, I do hope you'll use whatever influence you have to encourage Mr. Hale toward reason. It would be a shame for this to end in violence. The only violence here will be yours. If that's true, the blood will be on his hands, not mine. I'm simply a businessman protecting my interests." She wanted to hit him, wanted to wipe that smug expression off his face with her fist. Instead, she turned and walked away, her pulse pounding in her ears. She rode straight to the peak, faster than was safe, her mind racing. 1 week. They had 1 week to figure out a way through this, or Rourke would lose everything. She found him working on the roof again, fitting shingles with methodical precision. When he saw her expression, he climbed down immediately. "What happened?" She told him. All of it. The eviction notice, the 1 week deadline, Kaine's threat of violence. Rourke listened without interrupting, his face growing harder with each word. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. 1 week, he finally said. "Yes." "And then they'll come." "Yes." He looked at the house, at the walls he'd built, the roof he'd fitted, the windows he'd installed with his own hands. 4 months of work, 4 months of hope. "I won't leave," he said. "I know. They'll have to drag me out." "I know that too." He met her eyes. "You should go, back to town. When they come, I'm staying." "Eliza, I'm staying. We started this together. We'll finish it together. You could die. So could you. That hasn't stopped you. That's different." "How?" "Because I've got nothing left to lose. You've got your whole life ahead of you." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat coming off him, close enough to see the fear hiding behind his resolve. "My life is here," she said, "with you, in this house, fighting this fight. And if you think I'm going to abandon you now, you don't know me as well as you think you do." His hand came up, trembling slightly, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "Good thing you like stubborn." "I don't like stubborn. I love it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Neither was quite ready to fully acknowledge. Eliza felt her breath catch, felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying and utterly inevitable. "Rourke?" He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like fear and hope mixed together in equal measure. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "We're going to lose," she whispered. "Probably. We're going to lose and it's going to hurt. I know. And you're still not backing down." "No." She closed her eyes. "Then neither am I." They spent that night together for the first time, not in the cabin that still smelled like Thomas's memory, but in the unfinished house they'd built together. There were no beds yet, just blankets spread on the floor, no doors to close against the wind that whistled through the gaps in the walls. It wasn't comfortable, wasn't perfect. It was theirs. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Rourke's arm around her, Eliza stared up at the exposed rafters and tried not to think about the clock ticking down toward violence. "Tell me about her," she said quietly. Rourke went still. "Who?" "Your first wife, the one you lost." For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Her name was Sarah. She was young, too young probably. I was working in the mines back then, trying to strike it rich like every other fool. She knew it was dangerous, but she believed in me anyway. Believed we could build something." "What happened?" His voice went flat. "I partnered with a man named Victor Kaine." Eliza's blood turned to ice. "What?" "We found a promising vein, good silver. But Kaine got greedy, started cutting corners on the support timbers, pushing the crew too hard. I told him it wasn't safe. He told me to mind my own business, said if I didn't like it, I could walk." "And did you?" "No, I needed the money. Sarah was pregnant, and I wanted to give her everything, so I kept my mouth shut and kept working." Eliza's chest tightened. "Rourke?" "The collapse happened on a Tuesday. Killed 6 men. Would have killed me too if I hadn't been topside that day. Sarah was in the camp, waiting for me. When the dust cleared and they pulled out the bodies, something broke in her. She went into labor that night, too early. The baby didn't make it. And 2 days later, neither did she." Tears burned in Eliza's eyes. "I'm so sorry." "Kaine disappeared before anyone could hold him accountable. Took what silver we'd pulled out and vanished. I spent years trying to find him, tracking rumors, following leads, and then 6 months ago I heard he'd resurfaced here, calling himself a land speculator." Understanding crashed over her like a wave. "This isn't about the house," she breathed. "It's about revenge. It's about both." "Rourke, I'm not going to apologize for it. Kaine killed my wife and my child. He's killed others since. And now he's here, taking land from people who can't fight back, using the same tactics that got good men killed in those mines. Someone has to stop him." "And it has to be you?" "Yes." She wanted to be angry, wanted to feel betrayed that he'd pulled her into a personal vendetta without telling her the full truth. But looking at his face, at the raw pain there, she couldn't find it in herself. "Does he know," she asked, "that you're the one on the peak?" "Not yet. I've changed enough over the years, grown the beard, gone gray. But he will, eventually. And when he does, he'll come for you. That's what I'm counting on." Eliza sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "You're using this house as bait. I'm using it as a fortress. There's a difference? Bait implies I'm waiting to be killed. A fortress means I'm ready to fight. Against how many men? However many he brings. That's suicide. That's justice. It's not justice if you're dead." Rourke sat up beside her, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "Eliza, I need you to understand something. I didn't ask you here to trick you. Didn't pull you into this to use you. When I made that offer, when I said I wanted to build a home and a family, I meant it, still mean it. But Kaine showing up here, threatening to take what's mine again, you can't let it go. I won't let it go." She was quiet for a long time, processing, thinking. Finally, "If we're doing this, if we're really going to face Kaine, then I need to know everything, every detail, every plan, no more secrets." "Agreed. And we do it smart, not just brave." "I can try." "You'll do better than try, because I'm not losing you. Not to Kaine, not to revenge, not to anything. Understand?" He pulled her close, and she felt him nod against her hair. Understood. They spent the rest of the night talking, planning. Rourke showed her the defensive preparations he'd already made, Reinforced doors, shooting positions, emergency exits. He'd been ready for this fight longer than she'd realized, but he'd been planning to fight it alone. Now he wasn't alone. And that changed everything. The week passed too quickly. They worked on the house during the day, finishing what they could, reinforcing what they couldn't. Eliza made trips to town, gathering supplies and trying one last time to find proof of Kaine's fraud. She came up empty every time. On the sixth day, something unexpected happened. She was in the general store buying ammunition when Mary Pruitt approached her. "I want to help," Mary said quietly. Eliza blinked. "What?" "You and Rourke. I want to help." "Mary, this isn't your fight. Kaine's been pressuring my husband to sell our land. Says if we don't, he'll make things difficult. So yeah, it is my fight. It's everyone's fight. We just been too scared to see it. Even if you wanted to help, what could you do?" Mary's smile was fierce. "More than you'd think. I grew up with 3 brothers. I know how to shoot, and I'm not the only woman in this town who's tired of watching men like Kaine take what ain't theirs." Eliza felt something stir in her chest. "How many others?" "A few. Maybe more if we ask. But we gotta be careful. Kaine's got eyes everywhere." That night Eliza told Rourke about the conversation. He looked skeptical. "They'll get themselves killed, or they'll help us survive. This isn't their battle." "That's what I said." Mary disagreed, said it's everyone's battle. Rourke was quiet, thinking, if Kaine finds out people are organizing against him, then maybe he'll realize he's not as powerful as he thinks. Or he'll crack down harder. Either way, we find out what he's made of. The next day, Mary brought 3 other women to a meeting in the back room of the clinic. They were all wives or widows of farmers, all of them tired of being pushed around, all of them ready to fight. Eliza laid out the situation honestly, told them about Kaine, about the eviction, about what would likely happen when the deadline passed. She didn't sugarcoat the danger. "We could die," she said. "We probably will. But if we don't stand up now, Kaine's going to keep taking until there's nothing left to take. So if you're in, be in all the way. No half measures." The women looked at each other. Then one by one they nodded. They spent the afternoon planning. Nothing elaborate. They weren't soldiers. But they figured out signal systems, safe routes up the mountain, what supplies they could bring. It wasn't much, but it was something. On the 7th day, Kaine's men came. Eliza spotted them from the peak, a dozen riders this time, armed and moving with purpose. At their head rode Kaine himself, dressed like he was going to a business meeting instead of a war. Rourke stood beside her, rifle in hand, face calm. "Last chance to leave," he said. "Stop asking. I'm not going." The riders stopped at the base of the trail. Kaine dismounted, straightened his coat, and started walking up alone. Bold or stupid, probably both. He stopped about 20 yards from the house, well within shooting range. "Mr. Hale," he called out, "I believe we have business to conclude." Rourke stepped onto the porch, rifle held loosely but ready. "No business between us, Kaine." For the first time, something flickered in Kaine's expression. Recognition, then understanding, then fear, quickly masked. "Well," Kaine said slowly, "this is unexpected." "Is it? You didn't think I'd just disappear?" "After the mine, I assumed you'd either drunk yourself to death or put a bullet in your own head. Most men would have." "I'm not most men." Clearly. Kaine looked around, taking in the house, the situation. "So this is what? Revenge? You built all this just to draw me out?" "I built this because I wanted a home. You showing up here trying to steal it is just convenient." Kaine laughed. "Convenient? Yes, that's one word for it." His expression hardened. "You killed my claim, Hale. After the collapse, after the investigation, I lost everything, had to rebuild from nothing. You killed 6 men, and my wife, and my child. Accidents happen in mining. You knew the risks. Risks aren't the same as murder. Call it what you want. The law called it an accident, and now the law says this land is mine. So you have a choice. Walk away peacefully or be dragged off in chains. Either way, you're leaving." Rourke's grip on the rifle tightened. "I'm not leaving." "Then you're a fool." "Maybe, but I'm a fool with a rifle and higher ground." Kaine's smile was cold. "You think you can hold off 12 armed men?" "If I have to." "You'll die. Everyone dies. Question is whether it means something. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Old enemies, old wounds, old debts coming due. Then Kaine shook his head. You always were too stubborn for your own good. Sarah used to complain about it. Rage flashed across Rourke's face. Don't you dare speak her name. Why not? I knew her. Sweet girl. Too good for you, really. Shame what happened. Rourke raised the rifle. Kaine didn't flinch. Go ahead. Shoot me. My men will burn this place to the ground with you inside it. Is that really how you want this to end? From inside the house, Eliza called out. Rourke, don't! He didn't lower the rifle, but he didn't fire either. Kaine's smile returned. Miss Thorn, I was hoping you'd be here. Perhaps you can talk some sense into your friend. Save us all considerable trouble. Eliza stepped onto the porch, positioning herself next to Rourke. The only trouble here is you. I'm simply enforcing my legal rights. Your forged documents, you mean? Prove it. I will. Eventually. Eventually won't help you today. Today, Mr. Hale has a choice to make, and based on that rifle pointed at my chest, I'd say he's making the wrong one. Rourke's hands were shaking now, not from fear, from the effort of not pulling the trigger. Eliza put her hand on his arm. Not like this, she said quietly. Not murder. He deserves it. Maybe, but you're better than him. Don't prove otherwise. For a terrible moment, she thought he might do it anyway, might pull the trigger and end years of pain with one bullet. Then slowly, he lowered the rifle. Kaine's smile widened. Smart man. Now, about vacating the premises. I'm not leaving. The smile faded. Mr. Hale, you heard me. This is my land, my house, and I'll defend it with my life if I have to, so you can try to take it. But you better be ready to kill me, because I'm not going peacefully. Kaine's expression went cold. You're making a mistake. Won't be my first. Probably won't be my last. I'm giving you one more chance. I'm giving you one chance. Turn around. Walk away. Find someone else to rob. Because if you come back here, if you try to take what's mine, I will fight you with everything I have. And if I go down, I'm taking as many of your men with me as I can. The two men locked eyes, and Eliza felt the weight of history between them. All the deaths, all the pain, all the unfinished business. Finally, Kaine stepped back. You want a war? Fine. I'll give you a war, but don't expect mercy when you lose. He turned and walked back down the slope, remounted his horse, and led his men back toward town. Rourke stood on the porch, watching them go, his whole body trembling. Eliza wrapped her arms around him from behind. It started, she whispered. Yeah, he said. It has. The first attack came at dawn 2 days later. Eliza woke to the sound of breaking glass and Rourke's shout. She rolled off the makeshift bed, grabbed the rifle she'd kept beside her, and scrambled to the window. Through the dim morning light, she could see 3 men on horseback circling the house, throwing rocks and torches at the walls. Stay low, Rourke yelled from across the room. One of the torches landed on the porch, flames spreading across the dry wood. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. They'd expected Kaine to come back with force, but not like this, not trying to burn them out. Rourke fired a warning shot through the window. The riders scattered, disappearing into the tree line, their laughter echoing back toward the house. They're testing us, Rourke said, already moving toward the door with a bucket, seeing how we react. Eliza joined him outside, and together they doused the flames before they could spread. The porch was scorched but salvageable. She stood there breathing hard, adrenaline making her hands shake. This is just the beginning, she said. I know. They'll come back. They will. She looked at him, at the grim set of his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the tree line for threats. He'd been preparing for this his whole life, she realized. Every loss, every failure, every moment of pain had been building toward this fight. She just hoped he'd survive it. They spent the morning repairing the damage and reinforcing their defenses. Rourke showed her the firing positions he'd built into the walls, narrow slits that allowed them to shoot out while staying protected. Smart. Methodical. The work of someone who understood sieges. Where'd you learn all this? She asked. The war, long time ago. You never mentioned serving. Not something I talk about. She waited, sensing there was more. He was quiet for a moment, then, I was young, stupid. Thought war was glory and honor and all that nonsense they feed boys to get them to sign up. Learned real quick it was mostly mud and blood and watching your friends die for reasons nobody could explain. Swore when it was over, I'd never fight again. But here you are. Here I am. He drove a nail home with more force than necessary. Difference is, this time I know what I'm fighting for. Before she could respond, they heard hoofbeats. Both of them grabbed their rifles and took position, but the rider who emerged from the trees wasn't one of Kaine's men. It was Mary Pruitt, riding hard, her face flushed. "Mary?" Eliza called out. "What are you doing here?" Mary dismounted quickly. "Kaine's moving. Came through town this morning with 20 men, maybe more, buying up everything, food, ammunition, supplies. He's preparing for something big." "How big?" "Big enough that he told Sheriff Dalton to stay out of it. Said this was private business and the law had no place interfering." Rourke swore under his breath. "Dalton just rolled over? What else was he going to do? Kaine's got an army. Dalton's got a deputy with a bad leg and a drunk who sweeps the jail cells." Eliza felt her stomach knot. "What about the others, the women who wanted to help?" Mary's expression turned fierce. "They're ready, waiting for word. But Eliza, you need to understand, most of the town's scared. Kaine's been spreading stories about Rourke being dangerous, unstable. Says he's putting the whole community at risk by refusing to leave." "People believe that?" "Some do. Others are just looking for an excuse to stay out of it." Rourke set down his hammer. "Tell them to stay out of it. This isn't their fight." "It is their fight," Mary shot back. "Kaine's not going to stop with you. He'll keep taking until there's nothing left. You're just the first who had the spine to say no. And I'll probably die for it." "Maybe. But at least you'll die standing up instead of on your knees." The words hung in the air, sharp and true. Eliza saw something shift in Rourke's face. Not quite acceptance, but acknowledgement. Mary reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Brought you something." Inside were a dozen sticks of dynamite and a coil of fuse. Eliza's eyes widened. "Where did you get this?" "My husband works the quarry. He don't know I took it, and he don't need to know. But I figured if you're making a stand, you might need something with more bite than rifles." Rourke took the bundle carefully, examining the dynamite with practiced eyes. "This could work. Set charges around the approach routes. Make them think twice about a frontal assault." "Or blow ourselves up trying," Eliza muttered. "That too." Mary remounted her horse. "I need to get back before anyone notices I'm gone. But the women are ready when you need them. Just give the signal." "What signal?" Eliza asked. "You'll figure it out." She rode off, leaving Eliza and Rourke staring at the dynamite. "This changes things," Rourke said. "How?" "Means we might actually have a chance." Eliza wasn't sure if that was optimism or delusion, but she didn't argue. They spent the rest of the day placing charges at strategic points along the trails leading up to the peak. Not enough to kill, but enough to slow attackers down and make them reconsider their approach. It was dangerous work. One mistake, and they'd both be scattered across the mountainside. But they didn't make mistakes. As the sun set, they returned to the house and sat on the porch, watching the valley below turn purple and gold. "Tell me something," Eliza said. "If we somehow survive this, if we actually beat Kaine and keep the house, what then?" Rourke was quiet for a moment. "Then we live. Build the life we talked about. Maybe take in some of those orphans wandering around town with nowhere to go. Give them a home. You want children? Want a family. Doesn't have to be blood." She felt something warm spread through her chest. "I like that idea." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He reached over and took her hand. They sat like that for a while, neither speaking, just existing together in the fading light. It was the kind of peace Eliza hadn't felt in years, the kind that made you believe maybe, just maybe, things could work out. Then the peace shattered. A gunshot cracked through the evening air, then another, then a whole volley. Rourke and Eliza dove for cover as bullets tore into the porch railing, sending splinters flying. "Inside!" Rourke shouted. They scrambled through the door, slamming it shut behind them. More gunfire erupted, this time from multiple directions. Through the windows, Eliza could see muzzle flashes in the tree line. At least a dozen shooters, maybe more. They're surrounding us, she said, her voice tight. Rourke was already at the west window, returning fire. Take the east side. Don't waste ammunition. Only shoot when you've got a clear target. Eliza moved to position, her hands surprisingly steady despite the fear coursing through her. She'd never shot at a person before, never imagined she would. But when she saw movement in the trees and realized someone was trying to kill her, the hesitation vanished. She fired. Missed. Fired again. A man stumbled back into cover. The siege went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Kaine's men kept up steady pressure, trying to pin them down, but they weren't charging the house. Not yet. They were probing, testing, looking for weaknesses. Then, as suddenly as it started, the shooting stopped. Silence fell over the mountain, broken only by the sound of Eliza's ragged breathing. They're regrouping, Rourke said. That was just the opening move. What's the next move? Depends on Kaine. If he's smart, he'll try to starve us out. If he's angry, he'll try to storm the place. Which is he? Both. Eliza reloaded her rifle with shaking hands. We can't hold them off forever. Don't need forever, just need long enough. For what? He didn't answer, which told her he didn't have an answer. They took turns keeping watch through the night, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Every shadow became a threat. Every sound could be an attack. By morning, they were both exhausted, running on nerves and coffee made from grounds they'd already used twice. The attack resumed at midday. This time, Kaine's men came with more than bullets. They brought fire. Real fire. Not just torches, but barrels of oil they rolled toward the house before shooting them, creating walls of flame that crept closer with each attempt. They're trying to smoke us out, Rourke said, coughing as smoke began seeping through the gaps in the walls. Eliza tied a wet cloth over her nose and mouth. It's working. Not yet, it's not. He grabbed one of the dynamite sticks, lit the fuse, and hurled it through the window toward the nearest fire. The explosion scattered the flames and sent Kaine's men diving for cover. Rourke threw another, then another. The attackers fell back, but the fires kept burning. We're running out of dynamite, Eliza said. I know. And options. I know that too. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't seen before. Not just determination or stubbornness, but fear. Real, honest fear. He was terrified, just like her. And somehow that made her feel better. We're going to die up here, aren't we? She said. Probably. Any regrets? He pulled her close, kissed her hard. Just one. Wish I'd found you sooner. Before she could respond, a voice called out from below. Hale, I know you can hear me. Kaine. Rourke moved to the window. The land baron stood well out of rifle range, flanked by his men, looking immaculate despite the smoke and chaos. This has gone on long enough, Kaine shouted. You've made your point. You're brave. You're stubborn. You're willing to die for a piece of dirt. Congratulations. Now let's end this like civilized men. Civilized men don't hire thugs to burn people out of their homes, Rourke shouted back. I'm offering you one final chance. Surrender the property and I'll let you both walk away. You have my word. Your word isn't worth the air you waste saying it. Kaine's expression hardened. Then you're choosing death for yourself and for Miss Thorn. Is that really what you want? To get her killed over your pride? Eliza felt Rourke tense beside her. Don't listen to him, she said quietly. He's right, though. You're here because of me. If you die, then I die fighting for something that matters. That's more than most people get. Kaine called out again. I'm giving you 1 hour. After that, I'm burning this place to the ground with both of you inside. Your choice. He turned and walked back toward his men, leaving the threat hanging in the smoke-filled air. Rourke slumped against the wall. Maybe you should go. We've been through this. Eliza. No, I'm not leaving. I'm not abandoning you, and I'm not giving Kaine the satisfaction. He'll kill you. Then he kills us both, together. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt him trembling. Not from fear now, but from something else. Grief, maybe. Or gratitude. Or both. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. They held each other while the fires burned outside and the clock ticked down toward Kaine's deadline. Eliza found herself thinking about Thomas, about the life she'd lost and the life she'd found. Strange how death had a way of clarifying things, of stripping away everything except what really mattered. And what mattered was this, right here, this man, this fight, this choice to stand even when falling was easier. "The bell," Rourke said suddenly. Eliza pulled back. "What?" "The bell, the one I installed last month." She remembered. He'd mounted an old iron bell on a post near the house, said it was for emergencies, a way to signal for help if they ever needed it. "Who would hear it?" she asked. "Anyone close enough? Anyone paying attention?" "That's not a plan. That's hope." "Hope's all we've got left." He was right. They had maybe 3 sticks of dynamite remaining, ammunition running low, and no way out except through an army of hired guns. The bell was a long shot. A desperate, foolish, probably useless long shot. But it was something. "Do it," she said. Rourke didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, threw open the door, and ran for the bell post while Eliza provided covering fire. Bullets kicked up dust around his feet, but he made it, grabbed the rope, and started ringing. The sound echoed across the valley, clear and bright and impossible to ignore. Kaine's men opened fire, trying to drive him back, but Rourke kept ringing, over and over, a desperate plea cast into the wind with no guarantee anyone would answer. Then he ran back to the house, bullets chasing him the whole way. "Now what?" Eliza asked. "Now we wait." "For what?" "For either help to arrive or Kaine to make good on his threat." They didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, Kaine's men began their final assault. They came from all sides, using the smoke as cover, firing as they advanced. Eliza and Rourke fought back as best they could, but there were too many. For every man they drove back, 2 more took his place. "They're going to breach the door," Eliza shouted. "Let them try." Rourke lit the last stick of dynamite and positioned it near the entrance. If Kaine's men wanted in, they'd get more than they bargained for. The shooting intensified. Wood splintered, glass shattered. The house that Rourke had built with such care was being torn apart piece by piece. Eliza fired until her rifle clicked empty, grabbed Rourke's pistol, and kept firing. Her ears rang, her eyes burned from smoke. But she didn't stop. Then, through the chaos, she heard something, more gunfire, but from a different direction. She risked a glance out the window and saw riders cresting the ridge. Not Kaine's men, but farmers, shopkeepers, women with rifles, maybe a dozen of them, maybe more. They charged into Kaine's men from behind, scattering them, breaking their assault. "They came," she breathed. "They actually came." Rourke was at her side in an instant, staring at the scene below. "I'll be damned." Kaine's organized attack dissolved into chaos. His men weren't prepared to fight on 2 fronts. Some tried to stand their ground. Others ran. Within minutes, the tide had turned. But Kaine wasn't done. Through the smoke and confusion, Eliza saw him mount his horse and ride hard toward the house, pistol in hand. His face was twisted with rage, all pretense of civilization stripped away. "He's coming!" she shouted. Rourke grabbed his rifle, but Kaine was fast, using his men as cover, weaving through the chaos. He reached the house and kicked in the door before either of them could stop him. The world slowed down. Kaine raised his pistol, aiming at Rourke. Eliza screamed. Rourke dove sideways. The gun fired, deafening in the enclosed space. Blood sprayed. But it wasn't Rourke who fell. Eliza looked down at her shoulder, at the red spreading across her shirt, and felt her legs give out. She hit the floor hard, pain exploding through her body. Rourke roared and charged Kaine, tackling him before he could fire again. They crashed through the partially built interior wall, grappling, punching, 2 men trying to kill each other with their bare hands. Eliza tried to stand, but the pain was too much. She pressed her hand against the wound, feeling blood pulse between her fingers. Not fatal, her mind assessed automatically. Missed the major vessels. But bad enough. Through dimming vision, she watched Rourke and Kaine fight. They were evenly matched, Rourke stronger, Kaine more vicious. They rolled across the floor, destroying everything in their path. Then Kaine got his hand on a broken piece of wood, swung it hard into Rourke's head. Rourke went down, dazed. Kaine stood, breathing hard, blood running from his nose. He found his pistol, aimed it at Rourke's head. "Should have walked away," Kaine panted. "Should have just walked away." Eliza's hand found the rifle she'd dropped. She lifted it, her arms shaking, her vision swimming. "Kaine," she said. He turned. She fired. The bullet caught him high in the chest, spinning him around. He stumbled backward, shocked. the pistol falling from his hand. He looked at her, at the blood blooming across his expensive shirt, then down at Rourke. "You lose," he said, and collapsed. For a moment nobody moved. Then Rourke was crawling to Eliza, his hands pressing against her wound. "Stay with me," he said. "Don't you dare leave me." "Not going anywhere," she managed, though speaking was getting harder. The door burst open and Mary rushed in, followed by several others. They took in the scene, Kaine on the floor, Eliza bleeding, Rourke covered in bruises. "Get her to the clinic," Rourke said. "Now." "What about him?" Mary asked, gesturing to Kaine. "Tie him up. If he lives, we let the law deal with him." Two men lifted Eliza carefully. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through her shoulder, and darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness took her was Rourke's face, streaked with blood and smoke and tears, telling her to hold on. So she did. She woke in her own clinic, Mary's face swimming above her. "Easy," Mary said. "Don't try to move." Eliza's shoulder throbbed with a deep bone-level ache, but she was alive. That was something. "Rourke?" she croaked. "He's fine. Outside pacing a hole in the floor. Been there since we brought you down 3 hours ago." "Kaine?" "Alive, barely. Dalton's got him locked up. Turns out when you nearly kill a woman in front of a dozen witnesses, even a paid-off sheriff has to do his job." Eliza tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. "I said don't move," Mary scolded. "You lost a lot of blood. Another inch to the left and that bullet would have hit something important." "Lucky me." "Lucky us. You saved Rourke's life, saved all our lives, really. Kaine was ready to kill anyone who got in his way." The door opened and Rourke rushed in, his face haggard. "You're awake," he said, relief flooding his voice. "Apparently." He knelt beside the bed, taking her hand carefully. "I thought I'd lost you. Takes more than a bullet to get rid of me. Don't joke. When I saw you go down..." His voice broke. Eliza squeezed his hand. "I'm still here." "Because you're stubborn." "And you're not?" He laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "We're quite a pair." "Yeah, we are." Mary cleared her throat. "I'll give you two some privacy. But Eliza, you need rest. Real rest. Doctor's orders." She left, and Rourke pulled a chair close to the bed. "What happened after?" Eliza asked. "After they took me down the mountain?" "Your friends, the ones who answered the bell, they rounded up Kaine's men. Most surrendered once they saw their boss shot and bleeding. A few ran. Dalton's sorting through it all now." "And the house?" "Damaged, but standing. We can rebuild the parts that burned." "We?" "If you still want to." She looked at him, this rough, stubborn, broken man who'd somehow become everything to her. "I still want to." Relief washed over his face. "Good, because I don't think I can do it without you." "You could." "Could, but I don't want to." They sat in silence for a while, just holding hands, both of them battered and exhausted, but alive. "The town's talking," Rourke said eventually, "about what happened, about Kaine, about his documents." "What about them?" "Tom Brennan got curious, started digging around, found out Kaine's papers were filed by a clerk who disappeared 2 months ago. Same clerk who'd been taking bribes to backdate documents and forge signatures. So they were fake. All of them. Kaine's been using the same scheme across 3 territories. This was just the first place someone fought back." Eliza felt a grim satisfaction. "We were right. Being right doesn't feel as good as I thought it would." "No, it doesn't." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. "When you're healed, when all this is over, I want to do this properly." "Do what properly?" "Ask you to marry me. Build that family we talked about. Make a real life up on that mountain." Her heart stuttered. "Rourke, I know. I know we've only known each other a few months. I know we've been through hell and back. I know I'm not an easy man to love. But I'm asking anyway. Will you at least think about it?" She looked at this man who'd offered her a bargain that made no sense, who'd built her a house she never asked for, who'd fought a war to keep a future they'd barely started building. "I don't need to think about it," she said. His face fell. "I understand. I mean, yes, you idiot. The answer is yes." He stared at her, shock giving way to joy so pure it hurt to see. "Yes? Yes. When I'm healed, when this is over, When we've rebuilt what Kaine tried to destroy, ask me properly and I'll say yes. He kissed her then, careful of her injury, and she tasted salt, his tears or hers, she wasn't sure. Maybe both. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I'll build you a life worth living," he whispered. "We'll build it together," she corrected. "That's the only way it works." Together. Together. Outside, the sun was setting over Iron Ridge, painting the drought-stricken valley in shades of orange and gold. The town was broken. The land was hard. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in years, Eliza felt something she'd thought she'd lost forever. Hope. And that was enough. Recovery came slow and painful, each day blurring into the next. Eliza spent the first week barely able to lift her arm, the wound in her shoulder a constant reminder of how close she'd come to dying. Mary changed her bandages twice daily, tisking over the angry red flesh and muttering about infection risks. Rourke rarely left her side, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, bringing her water and broth she had no appetite for. "You need to go check on the house," she told him on the fourth day. "House can wait." "Rourke? I said it can wait." She didn't argue. Truth was, she liked having him there, even if he looked like hell, unshaven, exhausted, his hands fidgeting with nothing because he was a man who needed to be working and had nowhere to put that energy. On the 8th day, she insisted on walking. Mary protested, but Eliza was done lying in bed feeling useless. Rourke helped her stand, his arm around her waist, and they made it all of 10 steps before her legs went weak and the room spun. "Damn it," she muttered as he guided her back to bed. "Give it time." "I don't have time. People need the clinic. I've got patients. Mary's been handling them. She's better at this than she lets on." That was true. Mary Pruitt had surprised everyone, including herself, by stepping into Eliza's role with competence and calm. She couldn't do surgery or handle the complicated cases, but she could set broken bones, stitch wounds, and dispense the herbs and tonics that made up most of frontier medicine. "What about Kaine?" Eliza asked. "Any news?" Rourke's expression darkened. "Still locked up. Dalton's waiting for the circuit judge to come through. Should be another week or two. He could talk his way out of it. Not with a dozen witnesses who saw him shoot you. Not with proof his documents were forged. Kaine's done, Eliza. He just doesn't know it yet." She wanted to believe that, but men like Kaine had a way of slipping through cracks that should have held them. Money bought lawyers. Lawyers bought doubt. And doubt was all you needed when the alternative was a noose. "I want to see him," she said. "What?" "Kaine. I want to see him." "Are you out of your mind?" "Probably, but I need to look him in the eye. Need to know it's really over." Rourke studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found made him sigh. "You're not going alone." "I wouldn't dream of it." 2 days later, when she could walk without stumbling, they made their way to the sheriff's office. Dalton looked uncomfortable when they arrived, his eyes darting between them like he was expecting trouble. "Not sure this is a good idea," he said. "I don't care what you think is a good idea," Eliza replied. "I want 5 minutes. He's been asking to see you too. Both of you, actually." That gave her pause. "Why?" "Wouldn't say, but he's been quieter since the shooting, almost polite. It's unnerving." Dalton led them to the back cell. Kaine sat on the narrow cot, looking smaller than Eliza remembered. The bullet wound in his chest had been treated and bandaged, but infection had set in despite Mary's best efforts. His skin had a grayish tint, and his breathing came shallow. He looked up as they entered, and something like a smile crossed his face. "Miss Thorn, Mr. Hale, how kind of you to visit." "We're not here to be kind," Eliza said. "No, I suppose not." He coughed, winced. "You're here to gloat. Can't say I blame you. You won. I lost. That's how these things go. You tried to kill us. I tried to take what I believed was mine. The killing was unfortunate, but necessary." "Necessary," Rourke repeated, his voice flat and dangerous. Kaine met his eyes. "You of all people should understand. You spent years hunting me. You built that entire house just to draw me in. Don't pretend this was about land or justice. This was revenge. Pure and simple. It was both. Perhaps. But revenge was what drove you, just like it drove me after the mine collapse. You think I wanted to spend years rebuilding from nothing? I had plans, Hale. A future. You and your crusade destroyed it. You destroyed it yourself when you cut those support timbers. A calculated risk that didn't pay off. These things happen in business. Eliza felt rage building in her chest. You killed 6 men, and Rourke's wife, and his child. That's not business. That's murder. Kaine shrugged, then coughed again, harder this time. Blood flecked his lips. Call it what you want. In the end, we're all just trying to survive. Some of us are better at it than others. You're dying, Rourke said. It wasn't a question. Yes, the infection's spreading. Your friend Mary says I have maybe a week. Maybe less. He smiled again, and this time it looked almost genuine. Ironic, isn't it? You finally get your revenge, and I rob you of the satisfaction by dying anyway. I don't want revenge anymore. Liar. I want you to answer for what you did. Face a judge. Face the families of the men you killed. But I don't want you dead. Kaine laughed, a wet, rattling sound. You really have changed. The Rourke Hale I knew would have put a bullet in me the moment he had the chance. That Rourke died with his wife. Did he? Or is he just pretending? Kaine's eyes shifted to Eliza. Tell me, Miss Thorn, do you really know who you're pledging your future to? Have you asked him what else he did while hunting me? How many laws he broke? How many men he hurt? Whatever he did because of what you took from him. Ah, so crimes are acceptable when motivated by grief. Good to know. Eliza stepped closer to the bars. You don't get to do this. You don't get to twist things around and make yourself the victim. You're here because of choices you made, no one else. And you're there because of choices Hale made, bringing you into his vendetta, building you a house on stolen land. It wasn't stolen. Your documents were forged. Were they? Or did Tom Brennan forge evidence to frame me? How do you know what's real anymore? The question hung in the air like poison. Eliza felt doubt creep in, small and insidious, before she crushed it. Because I know what I saw, who I saw, and no amount of your manipulation changes that. Kaine studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're stronger than Sarah was. That's good. Hale needs someone strong, someone who can handle what he really is. I know what he is. Do you? Have you asked him about the men he tracked down before me? The ones who worked for me at the mine? There were 5. He found 3 of them. Eliza looked at Rourke. His face had gone carefully blank. What's he talking about? She asked quietly. Nothing. He's trying to get under your skin. Is he lying? Rourke was silent for a long moment. Then, no, he's not. Her stomach dropped. Rourke. After Sarah died, I wasn't right in the head. Spent 2 years tracking the men who'd helped Kaine cut corners. The ones who knew about the bad timbers and kept quiet because they needed the work. I found 3 of them. And I beat answers out of them, where Kaine went, who he was working with, what his plans were. He paused. One of them fought back, drew a knife. I killed him. The words landed like physical blows. Eliza tried to process them, tried to reconcile this confession with the man she'd been building a life with. Self-defense? She managed. Maybe. Probably. I don't know anymore. I was so angry, Eliza, so far gone. I can't say for certain I didn't want him to fight back. Can't say I didn't want a reason to... He stopped, his jaw working. Kaine laughed again. See? We're not so different, Hale and I. We're both men who've done terrible things in pursuit of what we wanted. The only difference is, I'm honest about it. The difference, Rourke said slowly, is that I stopped. I realized what I was becoming, and I stopped. Built a house instead of chasing ghosts. Chose to create instead of destroy. Until I showed up and gave you an excuse to be that man again. No. When you showed up, I chose to defend what I'd built. There's a difference. Kaine opened his mouth to respond, then doubled over coughing. Blood soaked through his bandage. Dalton moved to help, but Kaine waved him off. Get out, he rasped. Both of you. I'm done with this conversation. Eliza didn't need to be told twice. She turned and walked out, Rourke following. They made it halfway down the street before she stopped and faced him. Is it true? She asked. All of it? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm not proud of it. Because I wanted you to see who I'm trying to be, not who I was. That's not how this works. You don't get to hide pieces of yourself and expect me to. I know, you're right. I should have told you. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I just didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now. How am I looking at you? Like you're not sure you know me anymore. She wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Because he was right. The confession had shifted something, cracked the foundation she'd been building her trust on. I need time, she said quietly. How much time? I don't know. He nodded, his face carefully controlled. I'll be at the peak, working on the house. When you're ready to talk, you know where to find me. He walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the dusty street, her shoulder throbbing and her heart heavier than it had been since Thomas died. Mary found her an hour later, sitting on the clinic steps. Heard you went to see Kaine, Mary said, settling beside her. Word travels fast. It's a small town, not much else to talk about. She paused. You want to tell me what happened? To Eliza did. She told Mary everything, Kaine's revelations, Rourke's confession, the doubt that had settled like lead in her stomach. Mary listened without interrupting, her face thoughtful. When Eliza finished, Mary was quiet for a moment. Then, my husband hits me sometimes. When he's been drinking, not often, maybe once a month, sometimes less. Eliza's head snapped up. Mary, I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you because everyone's got secrets. Everyone's done things they're ashamed of or stayed in situations they shouldn't have. The question isn't whether someone's made mistakes. It's whether they're trying to be better. Rourke killed a man. Maybe he did. Maybe it was self-defense, like he said. Maybe it wasn't. But he also saved your life, saved mine, stood up to Kaine when no one else would, built a house for a future he wasn't sure he'd live to see. She looked at Eliza. You want perfection? You'll die alone waiting for it. You want someone real, someone trying? That's what Rourke is. How do I know he won't go back to being that other person? You don't. Same way he doesn't know you won't close yourself off again the way you did after Thomas died. That's what trust is. Betting on someone's future instead of their past. Eliza felt tears burning in her eyes. I'm scared. Of course you are. You're choosing to build a life with a complicated man in a hard place during a drought that might never end. You'd be crazy not to be scared. Mary stood, brushed off her skirt. But being scared isn't a reason to walk away. It's a reason to make sure you're walking towards something worth the fear. She left Eliza sitting there, staring at the mountains where Rourke was probably working himself to exhaustion, trying not to think about whether she'd come back. 3 days passed. Eliza threw herself into clinic work, treating the injuries from Kaine's assault and the general wear of frontier life. Her shoulder healed slowly, the range of motion returning in grudging increments. She slept poorly, her dreams filled with images of Rourke's face when he'd confessed, of Kaine bleeding in his cell, of the house on the peak burning while she stood frozen, unable to move. On the 4th day, Tom Brennan came to the clinic with news. Kaine's dead, died this morning. Infection took him. Eliza set down the bandage she'd been rolling. How's Dalton handling it? Relieved mostly, one less problem to deal with. Judge was supposed to arrive tomorrow, but I guess that's canceled now. What about Kaine's men, the ones who survived? Most took off when they heard Kaine was dying. Figured without him paying their wages, there wasn't much point sticking around. Dalton let the ones in custody go with a warning not to come back. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt empty. Rourke know? She asked. Sent word up to the peak. Don't know if he got it. After Tom left, Eliza stood in the empty clinic trying to figure out what she felt. Relief that Kaine couldn't hurt anyone else? Disappointment that he'd escaped justice? Guilt that part of her was glad he was dead? All of it. None of it. She didn't know anymore. She closed the clinic early and started walking. Not toward her cabin, not toward the saloon or the general store. Toward the trail that led up to Iron Ridge Peak. The climb was harder than she remembered, her healing shoulder protesting with each step. But she kept going, driven by something she couldn't quite name. Need, maybe. Or obligation. Or just the simple fact that she was tired of running from difficult conversations. She found Rourke on the roof, replacing shingles damaged in the fire. He looked up as she approached, surprise and wariness warring on his face. Heard about Kaine, she said. Yeah. He climbed down, wiping his hands on his pants. It's over. Is it? He's dead. His claim's void. The land's legally mine now, or will be once the paperwork clears. So yeah, it's over. She looked at the house, at the new lumber next to the charred wood, the fresh mortar filling bullet holes, the windows he'd replaced, evidence of destruction and repair existing side by side. "Tell me about the man you killed," she said. Rourke's jaw tightened. His name was Dutch Miller. He was the foreman at the mine, knew about the bad timbers before the collapse. I tracked him to a camp outside Deadwood, confronted him. He pulled a knife. We fought. I won. And the others? The ones you beat for information? I didn't break bones, if that's what you're asking, but I hurt them, made them scared, used their fear to get what I needed. He met her eyes. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I regret it. Those men knew people would die, and they kept quiet. They chose money over lives. So you chose to be judge and jury? I chose to find the man responsible for killing my wife. And if you hadn't found Kaine, if he'd stayed hidden, would you still be out there hunting, still be hurting people? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally. I'd like to think I would have stopped eventually, come to my senses. But honestly, I don't know. I was lost, Eliza. Completely lost. Building this house, meeting you, that's what brought me back. Not some moral awakening, just you. She felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. I need you to promise me something, she said. Anything. That man you were, the one who tracked down Kaine's crew, who beat information out of people, who killed Dutch Miller, I need you to promise he stays buried. That if we do this, if we build this life together, you're not going to slip back into that when things get hard. I can't promise that. The honesty startled her. What? I can't promise I won't ever be that man again. Can't promise I won't make mistakes or lose my temper or do things I regret. All I can promise is that I'll try. That I'll fight like hell to be someone worthy of you. But if you need guarantees, I can't give them. She stared at him, at this stubborn, damaged, honest man who'd somehow become her entire world. You're making this really hard, she said. I know. I should walk away. Should go back to town and forget about you and this house and all of it. Probably. But I can't. His breath caught. Eliza, I can't because Mary's right. Everyone's got history. Everyone's made mistakes. And if I walk away from you because you're not perfect, I'm just going to end up alone waiting for someone who doesn't exist. She stepped closer. I don't need perfect, Rourke. I just need honest. Can you give me that? Yes. No more secrets? No more hiding pieces of yourself because you're afraid of how I'll react? No more secrets. Even if the truth makes me angry? Even then. She reached up with her good arm and pulled him down into a kiss. It was different from the desperate, hungry kisses they'd shared during the siege. This one was slower, steadier, a promise instead of a question. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Does this mean you're staying? He asked. It means I'm choosing to stay. There's a difference. What difference? One implies I'm trapped. The other means I want to be here. She pulled back enough to look at him. I want to be here, Rourke. With you, building this life, even if it's hard, even if it scares me. I want this. The relief on his face was almost painful to witness. I'll build you a good life, he said. I swear it. We'll build it together. That's the only way it works. Together. Together. They stood like that for a while, holding each other while the sun moved across the sky and painted the valley in shades of gold. Below them, Iron Ridge looked small and fragile, a collection of buildings barely holding on against the drought and the wind and the weight of too many hard years. But it was still there, still standing, just like them. I had a thought, Eliza said eventually. About the house. Yeah? It's too big for just the two of us. You want to make it smaller? I want to make it fuller. There are kids in town, orphans mostly, whose parents died from fever or hunger or just gave up. They're living rough, sleeping in barns, scraping by on charity. We could take some of them in, give them a home. Rourke was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, how many? I don't know, 3, 4, however many we can handle. That's a lot of mouths to feed. I know. But we've got the space, got the land. And after everything that's happened, after all the violence and death, I want to build something that matters, something that lasts. He smiled then, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. A family. A family. I like it. But fair warning, I don't know the first thing about raising kids. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the weight of the word. I could get used to that. They spent the rest of the afternoon working on the house, side by side, planning where each child would sleep and how they'd divide the chores and what changes needed to be made to accommodate more people. It felt good, purposeful, like they were building towards something instead of just away from the past. As the sun began to set, Eliza heard hoofbeats approaching. She tensed instinctively, but it was just Mary riding up with a basket. "Brought you dinner," Mary called out. "Figured you two could use a real meal instead of whatever jerky and hardtack you've been living on." "You didn't have to do that," Eliza said. "I know, but I wanted to. Consider it a thank you for not getting yourselves killed." She dismounted, handed over the basket. Inside were fresh bread, roasted chicken, and what looked like apple pie. Rourke stared at the food like he wasn't sure it was real. "Mary, this is—" "Shut up and eat it. And Eliza, when you're done playing house, we need you back at the clinic. I'm good, but I'm not surgeon good. Had a man come in yesterday with a hand crushed in a mill accident and I nearly fainted. I'll be back tomorrow." "See that you are?" Mary remounted, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you two worked it out. Town needs something to believe in besides drought and misery. You're as close as we've got." She rode off before either of them could respond. They ate on the porch, watching the stars come out. The food better than anything Eliza had tasted in months. Or maybe it just tasted better because of where she was eating it. Who she was eating it with. "Think we can actually do this?" she asked. "Build a life up here? Raise kids? Make it work?" Honestly, always. "I think it's going to be harder than either of us expects. I think we're going to fight and struggle and question whether we made the right choice. I think there will be days we want to give up." That's not very reassuring. "But I also think if anyone can do it, it's us. We've survived worse. We'll survive this too." She leaned against his shoulder, careful of her injury, and let herself believe it. Let herself imagine a future where the house was full of voices and laughter, where the land greened up again, where the weight of the past finally lightened enough to carry. It was a fragile hope, the kind that could shatter with one wrong move. But it was hope, nonetheless. And for now, that was enough. The first child arrived 3 weeks later. Her name was Annie, though she wouldn't tell them that for almost a month. She was maybe 7 years old, skinny as a fence post, with tangled blonde hair and eyes that had seen too much. Sheriff Dalton found her sleeping in the livery stable and brought her to the clinic, figuring Eliza would know what to do. Eliza didn't know what to do. "Hello?" she said, kneeling down to the girl's level. Annie stared at her without speaking. "Are you hungry?" No response. "Do you have family? Anyone we should contact?" Nothing. Dalton cleared his throat. "Her parents died last winter. Fever took them both. She's been on her own since then, far as I can tell, living off scraps and charity." Eliza's chest tightened. "Where's she been staying?" "Wherever she can. But winter's coming again and I can't have a child freezing to death in my town. Figured with you and Rourke talking about taking in orphans, maybe." "Yes," Eliza said before he could finish. "Yes, we'll take her." That's how she found herself riding up to the peak with a silent, terrified child sitting in front of her on the saddle, clutching a bundle that contained everything she owned in the world. Rourke was working on the interior walls when they arrived. He looked up, saw the girl, and his face went through several expressions before settling on something between panic and determination. "This is Annie," Eliza said, helping the child down. "She's going to be staying with us." "Starting now?" "Starting now." He set down his hammer and approached slowly, like Annie was a spooked horse. "Hello, Annie. I'm Rourke." Annie pressed closer to Eliza's leg. "She doesn't talk much," Eliza explained. "Or at all, really, but she needs a home and we've got room." "Right, room." Rourke looked around at the half-finished house, clearly doing mental calculations. "Her bedroom's not done yet. The beds aren't built. We don't have... We'll figure it out. Eliza, we'll figure it out, she repeated more firmly this time. So they did. That first night, Annie slept on a pile of blankets in the corner while Eliza and Rourke lay awake, hyper-aware of every sound the child made. The second night was easier. The third night, Annie actually ate dinner with them instead of hoarding food in her pockets. By the end of the first week, she'd said 3 words. "Thank you, ma'am." It wasn't much, but it was something. The second child came a month later. His name was James, and he was 9 years old with a chip on his shoulder the size of a boulder. His father had been killed in one of Kaine's land disputes, and his mother had remarried a man who didn't want another man's child underfoot. James showed up at the peak on his own, having walked the entire trail, and announced he wasn't going back. "You Rourke Hale," he demanded. "I am." "I heard you killed Victor Kaine." "I didn't kill him, but I fought him." "Good. He deserved to die." James crossed his arms. "I also heard you're taking in kids. That true?" "It is." "Then I'm staying." Rourke looked at Eliza, who just shrugged. What were they supposed to do? Send him back to a home that didn't want him? James moved into the second bedroom, which Rourke had just finished building. Unlike Annie, he had no trouble talking. In fact, he barely stopped. He asked questions about everything: the house, the land, why Rourke built it this way instead of that way, what Eliza did at the clinic, whether they had horses. Could he learn to break horses like Rourke did? Why was the well so far from the house? Was it true Rourke had fought in the war? "Does he ever shut up?" Rourke asked Eliza one night after James had finally fallen asleep. "He's processing, trying to make sense of his world by categorizing everything in it." "How do you know that?" "Because I did the same thing after Thomas died. Threw myself into medicine, learned everything I could, asked 1,000 questions. It was easier than feeling." Rourke was quiet for a moment. "Think you'll be okay?" "Eventually, same as the rest of us." The third and fourth children arrived together, siblings named Clara and Ben, ages 5 and 3. Their parents had abandoned them at a church 3 towns over, and somehow word had reached Iron Ridge that Rourke and Eliza were taking in strays. Mary brought them up to the peak in her wagon, along with supplies and a look that said she'd fight anyone who suggested this was a bad idea. "2 more, Mary announced. "And before you say you don't have room, I already measured. That third bedroom's big enough for both of them if you build bunk beds." Clara, the older sibling, held her brother's hand and stared at the house with wide eyes. "Is this where we're staying?" "If you want to," Eliza said. "It's big." "It is." "Will there be food?" The question broke Eliza's heart. "Yes, sweetheart. There will always be food." Ben, who hadn't said a word, buried his face in his sister's shoulder. That night, with 4 children sleeping under their roof, Eliza and Rourke sat on the porch and tried to process what their life had become. "We're in over our heads," Rourke said. "Completely. I don't know how to do this, how to be what they need." "Neither do I, but we're doing it anyway." He reached over and took her hand. "Sometimes I wake up and think this is all a dream, that I'm going to open my eyes and be back in that mining camp, or drunk in some saloon, or dead in a ditch somewhere, because this..." He gestured to the house, to her, to the impossible family they'd somehow assembled. "This doesn't happen to people like me." "People like you? People who've done the things I've done, made the mistakes I've made." She squeezed his hand. "Everyone's made mistakes, Rourke. The difference is what you build after. And if I mess this up, if I fail these kids the way I failed Sarah, then we pick up the pieces and try again. That's all anyone can do." He pulled her close, and they sat like that until the stars came out, 2 broken people trying to build something whole out of the fragments they had left. The seasons changed. Winter came hard and fast, blanketing the peak in snow and testing every decision they'd made about the house's construction. But the walls held, the roof didn't leak, the stove kept them warm, and the children, slowly, carefully, began to thrive. Annie started talking more, her voice quiet but steady. She helped Eliza in the makeshift clinic they'd set up in one of the back rooms, learning to roll bandages and mix tonics. She had a gift for it, Eliza realized, a gentleness that came from understanding pain. James threw himself into learning everything Rourke could teach him about horses and construction and survival. He was too young to break horses properly, but he could gentle them, could read their moods and movements in ways that surprised even Rourke. The anger that had driven him to the peak began to channel itself into purpose. Clara became the house's organizer, bossing everyone around with the authority of someone twice her age. She decided who did which chores, mediated disputes between the other children, and made sure Ben ate his vegetables even when he protested. Ben, the youngest, attached himself to Rourke like a shadow. Wherever the man went, the boy followed, silent and observant, soaking up everything. Rourke handled it awkwardly at first, unsure what to do with this small person who seemed to worship him for no reason he could understand. But gradually, something shifted. He started explaining what he was doing as he worked, pointing out bird calls and animal tracks, teaching Ben to read the weather in the clouds. One night, Ben climbed into Rourke's lap while they were all sitting by the fire and fell asleep there. Rourke froze, terrified of waking him, and sat perfectly still for 2 hours until Eliza finally took pity and carried the boy to bed. "You're getting soft," she teased. "I know, it's disturbing." But she saw the way he smiled when he thought no one was looking. Spring came, and with it, rain. Not a lot. Not enough to end the drought, but enough to give people hope. The valley greened up slightly, crops pushed through the dry soil, and Iron Ridge began to breathe again. With the rain came more changes. Tom Brennan approached Rourke about starting a school. There were enough children in the area now to justify one, he said, and with Eliza's education and Rourke's building skills, they could make it happen. "I can't teach," Rourke said. "I barely made it through schooling myself." "You can build the building. Eliza can do the teaching, or we find someone who can." They built the school that summer with help from half the town. It was small, one room with benches and a chalkboard Mary donated from her dead father's estate. But it was theirs. A woman named Sarah Fletcher, a widow with teaching experience, agreed to run it in exchange for room and board. Eliza tried not to think about the fact that she shared a name with Rourke's first wife. Tried not to wonder if that's why he tensed slightly whenever Sarah Fletcher was mentioned. But one night she asked, "Does it bother you? Her name?" Rourke was quiet for a moment. "At first, yeah. Felt like the universe playing a cruel joke, but then I realized something." "What?" "The first Sarah's gone. Been gone for years, and holding on to her memory so tight was keeping me from living, from being present for you and the kids and everything we're building." He looked at her. "So no, it doesn't bother me, because Sarah Fletcher isn't my Sarah. She's just a woman with a name, and my Sarah would have wanted me to move forward." Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" That summer, something else happened. Something Eliza had stopped letting herself hope for. She missed her monthly bleeding. At first, she dismissed it. Stress could do that. Injury, age. But when she missed the second month and then woke up 3 mornings in a row feeling nauseous, she couldn't deny it anymore. She was pregnant. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She stood in the clinic, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, trying to process the impossibility of it. She'd thought that door was closed. After Thomas, after the years of grief and emptiness, she'd assumed her body had given up on creating new life. But here it was anyway, stubborn as she was. She didn't tell Rourke right away. Needed time to sit with it herself first, to decide how she felt. Fear warred with joy, doubt wrestled hope, and underneath it all was a bone-deep terror that she'd lose this too, that the universe would take back this gift before she had a chance to hold it. A week passed, then 2. Her body began changing in small ways, her breasts tender, her sense of smell heightened, exhaustion hitting her at odd times. The children noticed something was different but didn't know what. James asked if she was sick. Annie brought her tea without being asked. Ben just climbed into her lap more often, as if sensing she needed the comfort. Finally, on a cool evening in late July, she told Rourke. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of orange and purple. The children were inside, supposedly doing their chores, but more likely causing chaos. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words simple and stark. Rourke went completely still. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 2 months along, I think." He stared at her, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked like terror before settling on pure, unfiltered joy. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be without a doctor's examination. But I've delivered enough babies to recognize the signs in myself." "Eliza," his voice broke. He stood, paced to the edge of the porch, came back. I didn't think, I hoped, but I never, I know. Me neither. How are you feeling? Terrified, excited, nauseous. All of it at once. He knelt in front of her, his hands gentle on her knees. We're going to do this right. I'm going to do this right. I swear to you. Stop. She put her hand over his mouth. Stop making promises about being perfect. Just promise you'll try. That's all I need. Kissed her palm. I'll try. Good. They held each other as the sun disappeared and the first stars emerged. Two people who'd survived more than they should have, building a future neither had expected. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit hard and lasted well into the 4th month. Her shoulder, still healing from the bullet wound, ached constantly. And the fear never fully left. Every day she woke up expecting to find blood, expecting loss, expecting the universe to correct its apparent mistake. But the days passed and the baby stayed. Her belly began to round. She felt the first flutter of movement in her 5th month and cried so hard Rourke thought something was wrong. It's real, she kept saying. It's actually real. The children reacted to the news in different ways. Annie was quietly excited, already planning how she'd help with the baby. James seemed embarrassed by the whole thing, but asked careful questions about whether they'd still have room for him once the baby came. Clara announced she'd be the best big sister in the world, and Ben just patted Eliza's stomach and said, "Baby," with the kind of certainty that made everyone laugh. The town rallied around them in ways Eliza hadn't expected. Women brought baby clothes they'd saved from their own children. Mary organized a quilting circle to make blankets. Even Sheriff Dalton stopped by to congratulate them, looking uncomfortable but genuine. "You two did something good here," he said. "Gave people something to believe in. We needed that." As fall approached, Rourke finished the last major renovations on the house. Every room had proper walls now, proper doors, proper windows. The roof was solid. The porch was rebuilt. It wasn't fancy, but it was strong, built to last. One afternoon, while the children were at school and Eliza was resting, Rourke showed her something he'd been working on in secret. "Close your eyes," he said. "Why?" "Just do it." She obeyed, letting him lead her around the side of the house. When he told her to open them, she found herself staring at a wooden sign mounted above a new side door. It read, "The Hale Family Home and Clinic." Below that, in smaller letters, "All welcome who need shelter or healing." Eliza felt her throat tighten. "Rourke, I figured if we're doing this, if we're really building something that matters, we should do it all the way. The clinic can operate out of the house. That way you don't have to choose between your work and the family. You can do both." "That's going to mean a lot of people coming and going." "I know. A lot of chaos." "I'm counting on it." She turned to him, this man who'd started as a stranger with an impossible proposal and had become her entire world. "When did you get so wise?" "I didn't. I just learned to listen to a smart woman." She kissed him, deep and long, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally broke apart, she said, "I love you. I don't think I've said that enough, but I do. I love you. I love you too. Have since the first time you told me I was crazy. That was the first day we met." "I know." They stood there holding each other, while inside the house their children made noise and outside the valley stretched toward mountains that had stood long before them and would stand long after. Winter came again, and with it, Eliza's time. The labor started on a cold January night, 3 weeks earlier than she'd expected. Mary was there within an hour, having apparently prepared for this moment weeks in advance. She sent the children to stay with Tom Brennan's family, chased Rourke out of the room when his pacing became more hindrance than help, and settled in to coach Eliza through what turned into a long, difficult night. The baby was born just before dawn. A girl, small but healthy, with a strong cry and Rourke's dark hair. Mary cleaned her up, wrapped her in one of the quilts the town women had made, and placed her in Eliza's arms. "She's perfect," Mary said. Eliza looked down at her daughter, at this impossible, miraculous, terrifying gift, and felt something shift inside her. All the grief she'd carried for so long, all the pain and loss and fear didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else, something bigger. Love, pure and uncomplicated and absolute. "Can I come in?" Rourke's voice came from the doorway. Yes. He entered cautiously, like he was approaching something holy. When he saw the baby, his face did something complicated. Are you both? We're fine. She's perfect. Eliza shifted the bundle. Do you want to hold her? Rourke looked terrified. I don't know how. You'll figure it out. He sat beside her and she carefully transferred the baby into his arms. He held her like she was made of glass, his rough, scarred hands impossibly gentle. Hello, he whispered. I'm your father, and I'm going to mess this up sometimes, but I promise I'll try my best. The baby opened her eyes, dark like his, and seemed to study his face. What should we name her? Eliza asked. They'd discussed names before but never settled on one. Now, watching Rourke hold their daughter, Eliza knew exactly what felt right. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. Rourke looked at her, tears streaming down his face. Hope Hale. Hope Hale, Eliza repeated, because that's what she is, what all of this is. Hope that we can build something good out of broken pieces. Hope that the past doesn't have to define the future. Hope that love is stronger than loss. He leaned over and kissed her forehead, careful not to disturb the baby. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me, on us, for choosing this even when it was hard. It was the easiest choice I ever made. They sat like that for a long time, the three of them, while outside the sun rose over Iron Ridge and painted the snow-covered valley in shades of gold and pink. The years that followed weren't perfect. Nothing ever was. They fought sometimes, Eliza and Rourke, about money, about the children, about how much time Eliza spent at the clinic versus with the family. There were setbacks and struggles and moments when the weight of everything threatened to crush them both. Annie developed a cough that wouldn't go away, and they spent 3 terrifying weeks thinking it was the same fever that had killed her parents before it finally broke. James got thrown from a horse and broke his arm. Clara went through a phase where she refused to speak to anyone for a month. Ben had nightmares that woke the whole house. The drought came back the following summer worse than before. Crops failed. People left town. The clinic saw more patients than Eliza could handle alone, so she trained Annie to help her, and together they worked themselves to exhaustion, trying to save people who sometimes couldn't be saved. But they kept going, kept building, kept choosing each other and the life they'd created. More children came. 2 more over the next 3 years. A boy named Samuel who'd lost his family to a fire, and a girl named Ruth who'd been abandoned at a trading post. The house expanded to accommodate them. The noise level increased exponentially. But so did the laughter. Iron Ridge slowly transformed. The school flourished. More families moved in, drawn by word of a community that looked after its own. Tom Brennan opened a larger general store. Someone started a newspaper. The church, abandoned for so long, reopened with a new preacher who actually seemed to care about the people in his congregation. And on the peak, in the house Rourke had built stone by stone, the Hale family became a fixture. People came to Eliza for healing and to Rourke for advice on building or horses or just surviving. The children grew up strong and capable, each finding their own path. Annie eventually took over most of the clinic work, her gentle hands and patient demeanor making her a better healer than Eliza had ever been. James left at 18 to start his own horse ranch in the valley, but he came back every Sunday for dinner. Clara married a blacksmith from 2 towns over and started her own family. Ben stayed close to home, helping Rourke with the endless work of maintaining the property and expanding it as needed. Hope grew up wild and fierce, her mother's stubbornness combined with her father's quiet strength. She learned medicine from Eliza and building from Rourke, and somehow managed to be better at both than either of her parents. When she turned 16, she asked the question Eliza had been dreading. Why did you and Papa build this place? Really? They were sitting on the porch, the same porch where Rourke had first proposed his impossible bargain all those years ago. Eliza looked out at the valley, at the town that had grown up around them, at the life they'd somehow managed to build despite everything. Because we didn't know what else to do, she said honestly. Your father had lost everything. I'd lost everything. We were both running from pain we couldn't face, and then we found each other and realized that maybe, instead of running away, we could run toward something, toward a future, toward a family, toward hope. Is that why you named me that? Yes. Hope was quiet for a moment. Did it work? Did you find what you were looking for? Eliza looked at her daughter, at this fierce, beautiful person who existed because two broken people had decided to try, and smiled. We found more than we were looking for. We found a reason to stop running, a reason to stand and fight and build and love even when it was hard. We found each other. We found all of you. And we found out that the past doesn't have to destroy you. It can shape you, teach you, make you stronger, if you let it. Do you ever regret it, the choice you made? Never, not once. Even on the hardest days, I've never regretted choosing your father, choosing this life, choosing all of you. Hope leaned her head on Eliza's shoulder. I want to build something like this someday, something that matters. Then you will, because you're stubborn enough to make it happen. I get that from you. You get it from both of us. Years passed. Rourke's hair went fully gray, then white. Eliza's hands developed arthritis that made surgery difficult, so she focused on teaching Annie and Hope everything she knew. The children they'd taken in grew up and started families of their own, but they stayed close, building their lives in and around Iron Ridge. The house on the peak became a gathering place. Sunday dinners could number 20 people or more, children and grandchildren and friends and neighbors all crammed around the table Rourke had built with his own hands. On Eliza's 60th birthday, the town threw a celebration in her honor. They named the clinic after her. Put up a plaque thanking her for 30 years of service. She cried, embarrassed by the attention but touched by the gesture. That night, lying in bed beside Rourke, she said, "Did you ever imagine this? When you first made me that crazy proposal?" "Which part? The house? The family? The life?" "All of it." He was quiet for a moment. "Honestly? No, I imagined building a house, maybe finding some peace. But this," he gestured around them, encompassing everything. "This is so much more than I ever dreamed possible." "Me too." "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "I'm not done yet. We're not done yet. There's still more to build, more to teach, more to love." She rolled over to face him, studying the lines on his face, the scars from old fights, the gentle eyes that had seen so much pain and somehow still found room for joy. "I love you," she said. "Still. Always. I love you too, from that first day until my last." They held each other in the darkness, two people who'd survived the impossible and built something beautiful out of the wreckage. Rourke died on a Tuesday in late autumn. He was 73 years old, and he went peacefully in his sleep, holding Eliza's hand. The entire town came to the funeral. The house on the peak overflowed with people sharing stories about the man who'd built it, his quiet kindness, his stubborn determination, his willingness to fight for what mattered. Eliza stood at his grave, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, and felt the weight of his absence like a physical thing. But underneath the grief was something else. Gratitude for the years they'd had, for the life they'd built, for the choice they'd both made to stop running and start living. She lived another 10 years after that, long enough to see great-grandchildren born in the house Rourke had built, long enough to know that what they'd created would outlast them both. On her last day, she sat on the porch with Hope beside her, watching the sunset over the valley one final time. "Are you scared?" Hope asked. "No," Eliza said, and she meant it. "I'm ready. I've lived a full life, a good life, better than I ever expected or deserved." "You deserved all of it." "Maybe, but I'm grateful anyway." She squeezed her daughter's hand. "Promise me something." "Anything. Keep building, keep fighting, keep choosing love even when it's hard. That's the only thing that matters in the end." "I promise." Eliza closed her eyes, feeling the sun on her face, the wind in her hair, the solid wood of the porch beneath her. This place, this life, this impossible, beautiful, hard-won miracle. She thought of Thomas, her first love, and sent him a silent thank you for the years they'd had. She thought of Rourke, her second chance, her partner in building something that would outlast them both. And she thought about that first night on this very porch, when a strange man with an impossible proposal had offered her a bargain she couldn't understand. "I'll build the home. You help me build the family." He'd kept his promise, and so had she. Together, they'd built more than a home. They'd built a legacy, a community, a future. They'd built hope, And that Eliza realized as she took her last breath, surrounded by the family she'd never expected to have and the love she'd never thought she'd find again. That was more than enough. That was everything. The house still stands on Iron Ridge Peak. 5 generations have lived in it now, each adding their own touch while preserving what Rourke and Eliza built. The clinic operates out of the East Wing, run by Hope's granddaughter. The old bell still hangs by the side door, ready to call the community together in times of need. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blows just right through the valley, you can almost hear the echoes of what once was, children laughing, voices calling, the sound of 2 broken people who chose to build something whole. Because that's what love does. It takes fragments and makes families. It turns strangers into partners. It transforms pain into purpose. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough and brave enough and stubborn enough to keep trying, it builds a home that lasts forever. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real.